20% of the world's oil supply. Every single day, flowing through a corridor of water so narrow, you could throw a stone across the shipping lane. Now imagine that corridor, completely mined. Not by pirates, not by rogue actors, by Iran, with Russia supplying the technology, the intelligence, and the political cover to do it. This isn't a hypothetical. This is happening right now. Let me take you back to the moment everything changed. It wasn't a missile launch. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a distress call from a Panamanian-flagged oil tanker, the MV Aldebaran, traveling through the southern approaches of the Strait of Hormuz. A single explosion, below the waterline. Portside hull. The crew had no warning, no radar contact, no incoming threat. The ship simply detonated beneath itself. That was the signal. Within 6 hours, 2 more vessels reported identical incidents within a 12-kilometer stretch of water. One Norwegian crude carrier, one Greek LNG tanker, both crippled, both flooding. By dawn, Lloyd's of London had suspended insurance coverage for the entire strait. The global oil market spiked 9% before markets even opened in New York. And in Washington, Tel Aviv, Brussels, and London, secure phones started ringing simultaneously. Do you remember the last time the world felt this close to a major naval war? Drop your thoughts below, because what came next shocked even the analysts. Here's something the mainstream media hasn't fully explained to you. The United States didn't respond alone. Within 48 hours of the third tanker strike, a coalition assembled with a speed that military historians will study for decades. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, already headquartered in Bahrain, went to full combat readiness. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, the USS Gravely and USS Mason, moved to forward positions at the mouth of the strait. But here's where it gets interesting. Israel deployed its Sa'ar-6 corvettes, the most advanced surface combatants in its naval history, to coordinate with American forces in the Red Sea. These are vessels equipped with the naval version of the Iron Dome system, designed to intercept exactly the kind of drone swarms and anti-ship missiles that Iran has spent 2 decades perfecting. France sent the frigate FS Alsace under a NATO coordination framework. Germany quietly repositioned an intelligence-gathering vessel. Britain's Royal Navy had HMS Lancaster already in theater. And hovering above all of it, invisible, silent, orbiting at altitude, American Global Hawk surveillance drones mapped every centimeter of the strait's surface, feeding real-time data to a joint operations center in an undisclosed location. The coalition had one unified objective: reopen the strait before the global economy began to fracture. But to do that, they first had to solve the oldest, most terrifying problem in naval warfare. You have to find the mines before the mines find you. Let me explain something that most people don't appreciate about sea mines. They are not glamorous weapons. They don't launch from silos. They don't streak across the sky with a vapor trail. They sit, silently, patiently. Some rest on the ocean floor, activated by the magnetic signature of a passing hull. Others drift tethered just below the surface, invisible from the deck of any ship, completely undetectable to the human eye. Iran has spent 30 years developing and stockpiling these weapons. Intelligence assessments suggest their inventory includes contact mines, influence mines triggered by pressure or acoustics, and most alarmingly, a domestically modified variant of Russian-origin bottom mines capable of defeating standard countermeasures. That Russian connection matters. Because when analysts examined debris recovered from the MV Aldebaran strike, they found triggering components that bore signatures consistent with technology transfers that had accelerated dramatically since 2022. Moscow wasn't pulling the trigger, but Moscow had handed Tehran the gun.
This is where I want to ask you something directly. If you were a naval commander facing this situation, what's your first move? Clear the mines? Strike the source? Tell me in the comments.
Now, back to the strait. The U.S. Navy deployed its Avenger-class mine countermeasures, ship specialist vessels built with non-magnetic composite hulls, moving so slowly through the water they barely register a wake. These are not the ships that appear in recruitment posters. They're unglamorous, they're quiet, and they're arguably the bravest crews in the entire theater of operations. Because to hunt a mine, you have to sail directly toward it. Their high-resolution sonar arrays swept the seabed in systematic grid patterns, building a 3-dimensional map of every anomaly on the ocean floor. Each contact, a shadow, a curve, a cable had to be investigated. And for each investigation, a remotely operated vehicle descended into the darkness. Picture this: a camera feed, green-tinted, murky water, and then slowly materializing out of the sediment a sphere, corroded, anchored, armed. The ROV operator sits in a climate-controlled compartment aboard the ship above. His hands move with surgical precision on a control interface. He positions a neutralization charge adjacent to the mine casing. Then he reverses the vehicle to a safe distance. The detonation, when it comes, is almost quiet from the surface. A low concussion. A column of white water rising 15-20 meters into the air. One mine cleared. In a field that intelligence estimated contained between 40 and 60 devices. The math was brutal. Act 4. The dragon flies. But ships weren't the only tools in this fight. Flying low over the gray-green water of the strait, the MH-53E Sea Dragon helicopter is an aircraft that demands respect. With a rotor diameter of roughly 24 meters and a maximum takeoff weight exceeding 31 tons, it is one of the largest and most capable military helicopters ever built. And in this operation, it was being used as bait. The Sea Dragon tows an AN/AQS-14 sonar system through the water, essentially dragging a sophisticated sensor array hundreds of meters behind it as it flies just above the surface. But the tactic that drew gasps from every civilian observer was something called influence sweeping. The helicopter deliberately mimics the acoustic and magnetic signature of a large commercial vessel. It generates the exact profile that a bottom mine is programmed to detect. And then it waits for the detonation. Columns of water, explosions beneath the flight path, the crew barely flinching because they've drilled this hundreds of times. But in hostile airspace, over a strait where Iranian anti-aircraft batteries were on active alert, every single pass was a calculated gamble. 3 Sea Dragons flew continuous rotation operations. When one returned to refuel, another was already outbound. The operation ran around the clock. If you've never seen footage of a Sea Dragon minesweep, search it after this video. It's one of the most surreal things military aviation has ever produced. And if you want more breakdowns like this one, you know what to do. But here's where the operation became something far more dangerous than a clearance exercise. Iranian fast attack craft operated by units of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy began appearing in increasing numbers along the northern edge of the strait. These aren't conventional warships. They're high-speed fiberglass vessels carrying rocket launchers, heavy machine guns, and in some configurations, anti-ship missiles. They operate in coordinated groups, using terrain masking from islands to approach quickly and vanish before a response can be mounted. Their purpose was transparent: harass the clearance operation, force the helicopters to abort their passes, prevent the coalition from establishing a safe corridor. They almost succeeded on the second day. An IRGCN fast boat group of approximately 8 vessels closed to within 5 kilometers of the USS Gravely before being intercepted by coalition naval aviation. No shots were fired in that engagement, but the message was unmistakable. The Americans changed their posture. U.S. Central Command authorized preemptive strikes against what officials described as Iran's mine-laying enterprise. The infrastructure, the vessels, and the forward staging points being used to deploy mines into active shipping lanes. In a series of precision strikes conducted over roughly 36 hours, American forces destroyed more than a dozen small IRGCN vessels confirmed to be participating in mine-laying operations. Munitions storage facilities on 2 Iranian-controlled islands were targeted by a combination of carrier-based strike aircraft and Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from coalition destroyers. Israeli Air Force assets operating under a separate but coordinated mandate struck drone launch facilities being used to provide targeting data for the mine operations facilities that Western intelligence had linked to Russian advisors who had arrived in the region weeks earlier. This was no longer a mine clearance operation. It was a campaign. Day 4 of the operation, 71 hours of continuous mine hunting, 3 clearance ships, 4 helicopter crews, hundreds of personnel working in rotating shifts with almost no sleep. And then, at 0340 local time, the Joint Operations Center received confirmation. A safe corridor approximately 3 nautical miles wide and 40 nautical miles long through the critical choke point had been verified clear. Not permanently safe, not forever, but clear enough, for now, for a convoy to pass. The first convoy assembled 6 nautical miles south of the corridor entrance. 4 oil tankers. one LNG carrier, one container vessel carrying humanitarian cargo bound for ports in South Asia. Ahead of them, USS Gravely, running with all sensors active. Above them, two FA-18 Super Hornets orbiting at altitude, armed and ready. Flanking them on both sides, Allied frigates spaced to maximize sensor coverage. The convoy moved at 7 knots, slower than a bicycle. Every sonar operator on every vessel staring at screens, watching for any anomaly. And alongside those American crews, Israeli naval liaison officers, French coordination staff, a British sonar specialist who had been working for 17 hours without a break. That's the part the history books sometimes miss. Not just the technology, not just the strategy, but the people. The 23-year-old sonar operator from Virginia who hadn't spoken to his family in 4 days. The French frigate commander who volunteered her ship for the most exposed position in the convoy escort. The Israeli liaison officer who sat in the operations center of an American destroyer and looked at the screens with the same focused expression as every other person in that room. They weren't Americans and Europeans and Israelis in that moment. They were sailors, doing the oldest, hardest, most thankless work that naval warfare demands. 6 hours and 40 minutes after entering the corridor, the last vessel in the convoy cleared the northern exit of the strait. Intact. Safe. The global markets responded within the hour. Here's what I need you to understand about what just happened. This operation was not a victory. Not yet. Not completely. The corridor that was cleared will need constant maintenance. Mines can be redeployed within hours by small vessels operating at night. The pressure on Iran to stand down has increased dramatically, but the IRGCN has not disbanded. Russian political support for Tehran at the UN Security Council has blocked every resolution that could create meaningful international leverage. And there are questions that no one in any of those operation centers can fully answer yet. How many mines are still out there? How far does the Russian technical involvement actually extend?
And if this escalates further, if one of those fast boats fires on a coalition vessel, if an anti-ship missile finds its mark, what does the next chapter of this look like?
I want to hear from you, seriously.
Do you think the coalition can hold this together? Do you think Iran backs down or doubles down?
Leave your analysis below. Some of the most informed commentary I've ever read has come from this community, and I read every single one. Because this story is not over. The Strait of Hormuz carries the energy that heats homes, runs hospitals, powers factories across 3 continents. Whoever controls its freedom of navigation holds a lever on the global economy that no missile, no sanction, no diplomatic communique can fully replicate. That's why it matters. That's why men and women are out there right now, moving slowly through dark water, hunting for objects that could kill them before they ever knew the danger was there. Not for glory, rarely for recognition. For the simple, essential reason that the world needs that water to stay open. And they are the ones keeping it open.